unsettling situation in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi to be exact. It's been revealed 215 bodies were buried in unmarked graves behind a state jail in Jackson, of course.
Disturbing story. It comes from Jackson, Mississippi, where a woman says that authorities waited months to tell her that her son had been struck and killed by an off-duty police officer in his cruiser. 37-year-old Dexter Wade died back in March, but his mother said she did not find out about his death until August. The family's attorney is now calling for a federal investigation.
Betterston Wade said she filed a missing person report with Jackson Police Department in March after her son was missing for more than a week. She says when she was finally informed about what happened to her son, he was already buried.
Together for justice after they discovered their sons died and were buried in Hinds County Paupers Field.
NBC News reporting tonight is giving us more insight on a story of death and mystery and anger over an apparent lack of good police work and accountability in Jackson, Mississippi.
Heard a lot from you about our report last month on a man killed in Mississippi by a police officer, then buried without his family ever being notified.
Buzzards were flying overhead, and we were trying to figure out why are the buzzards flying overhead. But it's because they're putting them in shallow graves, and the only thing that they're putting them in is a body bag without embalming the bodies.
I'm here at the Raymond Detention Center, and just behind me, back off in this area, is where the Paupers Field is located. Now, the families of Dexter Wade, Mario Moore, and Jonathan Hankins joined civil rights attorney Ben Crump, along with attorney Dennis Sweet, to demand justice. Wade, Moore, and Hankins were buried in a Paupers Field in Hinds County, and their families say they weren't even notified. Mary Moore Glenn says her son experienced blunt force trauma, receiving 22 blows to the head. She's one of the many mothers searching for answers. Glenn says she was charged $250 to obtain a death certificate for her son.
At worst, this was intentional.
NBC affiliate WLBT about homicides there in Jackson, Mississippi that had gone unreported.
How they just got him and just threw him in a hole.
Why did they finally decide to tell the family?
The Jackson Police Department has not responded to our requests for comment on either case.
He just disappeared off the face of earth and nobody knew where he was.
Me and my family deserve better than that.
And buried in a grave marked with only a number at a cemetery outside a county prison.
It was, in fact, an accident, and that there was no malicious intent.
Jackson's mayor addressed Wade's case last week.
There was a lack of communication with the Missing Persons Division, the coroner's office, and accident investigation.
This is a place with some of the highest rates of homicide in this country, 156 homicides, I believe, in 2021.
Should nobody have to go through this as a mother? Nobody.
They shouldn't have.
It was intentional that they did not contact her.
Wade says police told her about the incident on August 24th, nearly 6 months after his death.
Just throw my son away. You a mother when you want to know about your son.
Wade was struck and killed by a Jackson police car, apparently, as he tried to cross a highway nearby. And even though police knew exactly who they hit within days of that accident, officials say, his mother, Betterston Wade, would spend the next 7 months. She would spend 7 months looking for her son.
And I didn't know it for a year and 7 months.
Remained in a morgue for 5 months after he was struck and killed by an off-duty police officer in a patrol car before they found out he'd been buried in a pauper's grave.
At the time, Jackson's mayor called it a failure in communication.
CBS News reached out to the Jackson Police Department but did not hear back.
After Betterson last saw Wade, that they came together again, this time at his unmarked grave in a state-run cemetery.
Mario had already been buried in a pauper's grave behind the county jail.
It's like they just threw him out like trash, just like they did the others.
They told me they couldn't find him. Nothing. He ain't in the morgue.
According to the coroner's report, Moore was killed by blunt force trauma to the head. His body was found on the street wrapped in a tarp 8 months before his family ever knew.
Basically, the coroner saying I buried his body in an undisclosed location.
Dump them in a grave like they're a dog or something. Who gives you the right to do that? Do we have a system that works for us?
Dexter Wade was struck and killed as he was walking near the interstate. That happened in March. Wade was buried in the pauper's grave in July. The family found out where his remains were 1 month later.
I've heard it described the cop killing cover-up case. And they do not contact her until NBC reporter does an exhaustive investigative report, and almost 7 months later, she's finally taken to a burial ground for poor, unknown people and destitute who the city pays.
What we're finding, Isaiah, is that Mississippi is Mississippi. It's an ugly Mississippi.
As you have just seen, Mississippi is part of very dark history in the southeastern United States. And as we learned in history class, history has a funny way of repeating itself. This is evident in the pauper's graveyard discovered behind Hinds County Correctional Facility. Hundreds of bodies have secretly been buried here going as far back as 2008. Some of whom have been murdered by Mississippi policemen. Gretchen Hankins, Mary Moore Glenn, and Betterston Wade are 3 mothers of adult sons who went missing. Their bodies were later discovered and made public by reporters from New York City. This is how these poor mothers found out that their sons had already died and been buried. The 3 bereaved mothers have joined with civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump to bring justice to such an awful and unthinkable situation. Mayor Lumumba of Jackson, Mississippi, basically shifted the blame and evaded accountability by saying that it was a miscommunication, and that paupers' graveyards are no secret in the United States. If it is no secret, then why did dozens of families go unnotified when their children went mysteriously missing? Why didn't Dexter Wade's family get notified by the county coroner after he was hit by a police vehicle, even though he had a pill bottle with his name on it when he died? Why couldn't Jonathan Hankins receive a proper burial where his family can mourn him soon after his death? Why couldn't the family of Mario Moore be notified when his body was discovered wrapped in a tarp on the side of the road after dying by blunt force trauma? Was this the cover-up? What is going on in Jackson, Mississippi? And why are so many people dying by homicide, either mysteriously or directly by the hands of police officers? If you didn't notice by now, most of the people who were exhumed from this pauper cemetery were African American. Let's not forget that Mississippi itself was one of the largest slave states of the Confederacy, and much of its original economy was boosted off the backs of slavery. The state was also one of the most stubborn Confederate states to abolish slavery after the Civil War, with many white supremacists fighting against freeing slaves. White supremacy, as we know in 2024, is still alive and well today. And while it exists throughout the entire country, Mississippi can be attributed to much of its origins. The White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan were formed in Mississippi in the early 1960s, when the original KKK disbanded after a federal investigation by Congress. Mississippi Burning was an Academy Award-winning 1988 film that depicted the true account of some of the Mississippi-based White Knights of the KKK at their absolute grisliest. Their links to the murders of 3 civil rights activists, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner. These 3 young men were advocating for racial equality and had already been targets of the White Knights. Until one day, one of the members of the White Knights of the KKK, Cecil Price, accosted the three men while he was working his day job as a police officer. He was deputy sheriff of Neshoba County in Mississippi and was involved in the murder of these three young men after he had participated in jailing them unlawfully, murdering them, and burying their bodies. Much like Dexter Wade, Mario Moore, and Jonathan Hankins, these three civil rights activists had been reported missing. Also alarmingly similar was that Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Shermer were later found buried. The bodies of Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Shermer were discovered along with 9 other black bodies. Cecil Price was not convicted of murder, even though he was directly responsible for apprehending the victims before they were eventually murdered by the KKK. Even though he was named one of the main conspirators in the murder of Schwerner, Goodman, and Chaney, he was not convicted and only sentenced to 6 years for violation of civil rights of the victims. You can even tell he has absolutely no remorse in his 1964 mugshot. Some of you watching me have already put together the parallels of this story and the modern-day monstrosity known as the Paupers' Graves in Jackson, Mississippi. Men who were brutalized by policemen, conspiracy to hide bodies, and trying to keep murders a secret. Was white supremacy or even the KKK involved in the murders of countless black men in modern-day Jackson? I was bound and determined to find out. I am a big believer in listening to the messages that a town or city gives me when I visit it. And when I visited Jackson, I definitely received several messages. I want to also make it known that I did not intend to communicate with the spirits of the victims, and that I wanted to come to this town out of respect. Right behind that building is actually where the Pauper Cemetery is, but it's blocked off to the public. No one can actually go there and pay respects to the bodies that have been buried there. And plus, this area right here, there's a road there that strictly forbids any unauthorized vehicles. So I'm guessing those are the vehicles or for either the people who work at this facility or the families who come to visit. How very sad. So I am in Clinton, Mississippi, which is right outside of Jackson. Now, as a reminder, a nationwide scandal happened right here. Right behind me is the Hinds County Penal Farm. Over 200 bodies were found buried right by this prison. So this entire proximity is full of spiritual energy. Now, I am standing about as close as I can get to the entire investigation. The place is very heavily monitored, as any correctional facility is. There are cameras basically every road. They were watching me as I was driving by. And also there was a very big sign that said no unauthorized vehicles beyond this point.
I actually reached out to a few of the victims' families to see if they wanted to talk about it, but understandably, they really didn't. So I'm sure a lot of the spirits that still float around this correctional facility have a lot of stuff to say. The other part of this investigation is I hope to bring awareness to something appalling. There are so many people that were buried here whose families weren't contacted. The coroner of Hinds County didn't bother to actually reach out to any of the families. And a lot of the townspeople, from what I understand, are extremely upset by this, rightfully so. People were buried in the Pauper Cemetery at Hinds County Correctional Facility with no ability to say goodbye to their families before they passed. The families were not notified. There was no proper funeral. There was no memorial service for any of the people who died here. Some of the people who died actually died in this prison, and no one was contacted about it. And how do these poor inmates get remembered by on this physical earth? By a hole being dug 6 feet underground and a 2x4 stuck on top of their body. This place is patrolled by drones. Well, you know what? My drone is patrolling y'all. I feel like I'm in the Blair Witch Project. Oh, Ian, what are we going to do with you? So, I almost didn't actually go through with this investigation. I am really nervous. So, this video is going to be a little different. Instead of going to these notoriously haunted places like I have been, I am actually going to a place where I don't really think it has actually developed a reputation in the paranormal investigation community. What I'm about to go see tonight is Pauper's Cemetery in Hinds County Penal Farm, just outside of Jackson, Mississippi. I'm really anxious. I'm really nervous. I don't even know where to begin. Part of me doesn't even want to do this investigation because it's so risky. Part of me feels the need to do this investigation, partly because it's so risky, but I feel like this made the news in January of this year and it just evaporated and no one's talking about it. Why? So for those of you who didn't hear, and many people didn't actually hear, the news broke out in January of 2024. Where a Pauper Cemetery was actually discovered right behind Hinds County Penal Farm, just outside of Jackson. Basically what a Pauper Cemetery is, it's when someone is buried in the ground, they don't have the means for a proper burial, they don't have the means for a casket, they don't have the means for a gravestone, memorial service, and 215 bodies were found October of 2023. The most appalling part of this, it's not really the fact that all of the bodies were discovered. I mean, that's definitely part of it, but none of the families were notified that any of these men died. None. What's really disheartening is several people actually reported their family members missing. And when these bodies were discovered, some of these men that were buried were those missing family members. So I actually reached out to a few of the people who were in the news. They didn't respond, and I wanted to kind of just respect that. But I reached out to 2 mothers of 2 sons who were actually buried at the cemetery. Both of them naturally were distraught that their sons basically had went missing and nothing was told to them. They had to basically find out that they were buried in a field behind a prison. Now this makes my blood boil on so many levels. I don't know if it's just because of the fact that it's just so wrong, but what attracted me to this field is all these men that were buried here and died in very mysterious circumstances and never got a proper burial and never really had a chance to say goodbye to their families. These men have stories to tell. And I know it doesn't really say much knowing that they're dead. Usually when there's a burial ground of some kind, especially when there are bodies who were buried there and they didn't leave the world in very peaceful circumstances, there's probably going to be some residual energy near this Pauper Cemetery. Now earlier when I went to this cemetery in the daytime, right when I got to Jackson, it was heavily guarded. What frightened me is there were cameras on the public street that were actually watching every car that just drove by. And there was also a turnoff lane where there was no gate, but it said unauthorized vehicles forbidden beyond this point, or only authorized vehicles beyond this point. And then it also had these very, very large imposing signs that said monitored with drones. Were the drones monitoring y'all when y'all illegally buried a bunch of men? But what sickens me about this particular case is that none of the families were notified. It was the coroner's job to reach out to these families. And again, many of the families were on record saying that their sons were missing and they weren't notified, and they basically had to find out this way. The bodies were known to the police in Jackson, Mississippi, and they were covered up behind a jail with 2x4s stuck in the ground on top of their dead bodies. Can you be any more medieval? Another disturbing layer of this case is there were 24 bodies in the cemetery that were involved in a homicide case, and the Jackson police failed to notify any of these families. All of these bodies, the 24 bodies that I just mentioned, were from 1 year. And I haven't looked into it that deeply, but I guarantee you, because I know how the world works in 2024, every single person who is in charge of this cemetery is still in power. Every person who knew about this, every policeman, every prison guard, even the coroner, are all, I'm sure, still working. I just found something else about this that sickens me that I didn't actually know until just now. The mayor of Jackson, Mississippi says, and I quote, "Rampant misinformation about the Hinds County Paupers Graveyard on social media is harmful. They created this narrative. They called it a secret grave. That's supposedly behind, apparently, the secret jail in Jackson. A pauper's field isn't only found in Hinds County. It's in every county in the United States of America. It's important that we own our narrative and don't allow anybody to create a narrative for us." Insert Judge Judy clip.
Something wrong with you. That's my judgment. Goodbye.
That is gaslighting 101 if I've ever freaking heard it. Mayor, don't come for me, but do better. Maybe people are calling it a secret grave because the families of the people buried there had no idea their children were dead. And maybe people are creating a narrative for you because you've created one for yourself. What this mayor should have done is just apologize and said, we will work on this, and given some PR friendly answer. But to blatantly say that people are overreacting is just despicable. Like I said earlier, this hit the news in January of 2024, even though the actual discoveries of the bodies were in October of 2023. But since it hit the news, it stayed quiet. It made NPR, it made PBS, it made a lot of national headlines, but then flatline. Hopefully me investigating this site will actually bring some more dialogue. Will actually kind of wake people up. It will actually get people to question authority even more so than they're already doing. Government officials in high positions of power are wondering why the general public is becoming more and more disenfranchised with the American judicial system. This is why. All this aside, let's begin the investigation. I hope I don't get arrested. I hope nothing goes awry on this investigation. I have to stay a little bit farther away from the actual jail because, like I said, it's very heavily monitored, and if they see some guy with a bunch of camera equipment basically sneak onto the premises, like that's a no-go. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be standing very near the pauper cemetery, and I am going to be doing the spirit box session. I am going to be using the Spirit Talker app, and I'm just going to be relying on my gut to listen to the stories of these hundreds of men who died wrongfully and secretively. I hope I don't die. just got here and I've already been spotted by a cop. So I am kind of shaky right now. By shaky, I mean I am really fucking anxious, like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, borderline panic attack. Yeah. And the reason why is because the place is so heavily guarded, both at night and the daytime. Anybody doing anything anywhere remotely close, my one hope is that there's a country club, I think, or a golf club that is literally right next to the Hinds County Penal Farm. But there's a cop that's just sitting there watching. So I don't know what to do. Do I turn around? Do I go home? Do I just leave Jackson because I've already stirred up enough chaos? Or do I continue and just find a dark place to do the investigation? I'm also worried about driving past the jail again because there's only one way in and one way out. And I mean, obviously, like I said, there are police cameras everywhere, and they saw my car once earlier today. They just saw it again. My fear is if I drive back a third time, they're gonna know something's up, and they're gonna know that I'm up to something. But fuck it, it's fine.
Fuck it, it's fine.
All right, y'all, I made it. I'm here. The prison is... The prison is...
Those lights that you see are lights from an approaching cop car. The loud noise that you heard was actually one of my lights that was falling off right when the cop car was coming. It was as if multiple forces wanted me out of there. The only thing I knew to do in that exact moment was to not fuck around and find out with the Mississippi police, but instead to get all of my equipment and just run back into my car and drive away. Luckily, as soon as the cop saw me get into my car and drive away, he somehow didn't follow me, but he does actually come up later. Stay tuned.
Shaking. That place is heavily watched. Every single square inch is monitored, apparently, because I almost got arrested. I am not trying to fuck with these Mississippi cops out here. If they see this and they smell my homosexuality, they'll take me in real quick because they'll probably immediately think that something is wrong with me. So basically, I went on the road that leads to the jail. As soon as I got out, the camera basically cut off at the exact perfect moment, because as soon as my clip-on light dropped, I saw a cop with his lights on leaving the jail and coming towards me. Leaving the jail, coming towards me. To my knowledge, there are no cameras anywhere near where I was. But apparently those drones, they're probably watching me right now. I'm literally at the Sonic, like across the street. I really wanted to actually get a little bit closer to the Paupers Cemetery, but that place is heavily guarded. And I know some of you out there are gonna be like, well, that's just prisons. Yeah, but something feels different. I've been to jails and prisons before, and this one feels not actually as an inmate, especially after today, thank God, but this one felt a little bit different. I think I even looked up where the exact spot of the Paupers Cemetery was, and it is like roped off, like the general public cannot go there at all. What I'm going to do is actually do the rest of this investigation from my car. It's not my preferred method to do it in my car. It's my preferred method to like roll my sleeves up and get in the mud, literally basically be as close to the bodies as I can. But I'm still on the same general vicinity of it all. I saw the cop coming towards me, and as soon as I turned off my light, got back in my car and drove off, the cop like disappeared. It's like he was trying to scare me off. It's like he was trying. I don't know how he didn't approach me and just be like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, let me run your background check. Let me see your insurance, your license, your social security. I know I'm like still just so shaken that he didn't actually stop me. I'm about to pull up my Spirit Talker app and see what these spirits from the Pauper Cemetery actually have to say. All right, I turned it on. I'm still shaking. Like, I'm still shaking. I cannot believe I did not just get arrested. Objects. Yes, I have many objects here. There are many, many objects that I have with me in my car. If any of you can come forward and tell me anything about yourselves or make yourselves known, I would really, really appreciate it. Something's gonna happen. 1900s. I literally just almost got arrested. I still cannot get over it. When I saw the police lights coming towards me, I was like, this is it. This is where I get arrested. This is what I find out what it's like behind bars. I'm sorry for my nerves. I'm sorry. I just had a very rattling experience. Whoa. Gash. Did you die by gashing? So far we have object, we have 1900s, and we have gash. Were you gashed with an object in the 1900s? I know I'm standing on really sacred and really haunted ground. I'd love it if you'd come forward and tell me. I came all the way from Texas to be here today. I really didn't come for the Myrtle's bed and breakfast. You like to play games. Honey, so does every other man I have ever dated. What kind of games do you like to play? Are you young? Are you a child? I think now that my nerves have kind of calmed down a little bit and I realize that I'm not getting arrested, more stuff is coming through. Anything else that you'd like to tell me? I would love to hear from you. I'm speaking to anybody who's been buried at the Pauper Cemetery by Heinz Penal Farm. We ain't open yet. Are you a child? Were there any children buried at the Pauper Cemetery? Thank you. I trust you too. That's awesome that you trust me. When you tell me that you trust me, that is a very, very much appreciated compliment. And I really, really thank you for that. So since you can trust me, I'd really, really love to hear more from you. Did you know anyone that was buried at the Pauper Cemetery at Hines County Penal Farm? Or were you one of the people who were buried at the penal farm? It's them. Yeah, they were wrongfully buried by some really, really secretive and maleficent people who are in power. I hope they get stopped. They sure don't want people to go visit gravestones or graveyards. Jackson, Mississippi is so done with me at this point. Like, I know every single person who's driving past me is just like, who the fuck? It really means a lot that you trust me and that you've told me that it's them. You like to play games. Oh no. There's the cop that chased me out. How does it feel to be recorded? I'm shaking again because the same exact car, like I recognized the light. It looked like it was about to turn towards me again, but he's at the gas station that's on the other side of this Sonic. What a fucking investigation. I want to continue it, but I don't want him realizing that like I'm just parked here. But like, yeah, he had like bright lights, and I don't know if that's just part of the vehicle when it turns on. It looked like a police van. It looked like a van that like takes the prisoners or the suspects into custody. I don't know. I don't want to go back over there. Sorry to disappoint. It would be awesome to go right up to that fucking cemetery and do some more investigation, but Daddy is not trying to get arrested today. They do not want me here, but I ain't going nowhere. I feel like that person that's like just so bound and determined to like win a race, and their eyes are blackened, their feet are broken, they can't walk, and they're just like, make it to the finish line. That is what I feel right now. That police van with like the really frightening and imposing lights was actually at this gas station. He recognized my car when I was parked at the Sonic parking lot. He got out and he was just standing there like outside of his van, just like doing this at me. I just want to investigate some ghosts and go home. I just want to catch some data. I just want to have some conversations with some people that were wrongfully buried, and then I can go home. Because there have been so many delays, and y'all also haven't seen this, but I've had a lot of technical issues as well. There are forces that are unforeseen that are telling me that I should probably wrap up this investigation as soon as possible. So I'm actually driving back to Austin a little bit later today. I'm going to do one final thing. This is all I've wanted to do the entire night. One final thing, and that is use the spirit box to communicate, hopefully, with some of the people who were buried in the Paupers Cemetery. So as a reminder, when I was communicating with the spirits through the Spirit Talker app, it seemed a little bit random. There seemed to be some people saying that they were gashed. It was 1900s. And then I also got children. I got it's them. But what I'm actually gonna do, just to get the most out of this final moment of the investigation, and then I'm going home, Jackson, is I'm going to keep this open, and I am going to turn on my spirit box and scan the radio frequencies. Hopefully we'll hear some voices. I'm by your side too, and thank you for trusting me. Can you please come forward and talk into this box? I'd love to hear your story. Somebody's in the wrong. Yeah, no shit. As another cop just passed me. Money? Did you say money? I think it's fair to say that there are some of you who've been buried since I'm so close to your burial ground. Can you please come forward? This is another form of J-Pay, if that means anything to you. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to hide, but I always feel like there's someone watching me. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of layers, there's a lot of stuff that y'all went through that y'all should not have gone through. And I want to tell you that that was wrong of what they did to your bodies. They should have given you all proper burials and notified your families. Yeah, it was a disaster. Absolutely right, it was a disaster. But thank you for letting me come talk to you today. I drove all the way from Texas just to be here right now. Please know that you were all wrongfully buried. I hear several different voices coming through. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the people that contributed to your secretive burial? Yeah, they gave up. Yeah, they gave up. Oh my God. It says I want my life back. Why do I get so teary-eyed on these investigations? Therapists don't cry. Yes, we do. I want my life back. That could be any of the hundreds of bodies that were literally buried in that pauper cemetery. One of them was actually run over by a police car. And to be here in this realm and see how vulture-like the police are here. What are y'all hiding? And to be so insensitive towards people dying and their families who found out through the news. I'm so sorry. I wish I could give you your life back. Thank you all so much for coming forward today. Mississippi is a very dark, dark place. Watch out for evil. I'm watching. There's a high chance that most of y'all talking to me right now are people of color. I'm gay. They don't like me either. Catch that team. You will see me. I hope I do see you. I think everyone who I've communicated with today kind of they sense that I came here, I think, with goodness and good intentions. All those intentions were is to just allow people to be heard because they were taken from us way too soon. I'm gonna turn this back on and I'm going to tell them goodbye, and hopefully I'll hear their voice one last time. Before I leave and go back to Austin, I just want to thank all of you who've come forward and told me about your story, told me about your lives. I wish I could give you your life back. I wish I had that power. But like I said, I want to thank all of you. Weight of my heart. And I just want to say thank you all so much. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for communicating with me. I hope I bring more people out here and they have investigations like this, or people will at least start to give a shit that this happened, because this was not supposed to. I did not believe in this. Thank you for communicating with me, and I will do my best to bring justice in any way that I can to all of your wrongful deaths, all of your wrongful burials. Heard body. This is how freaking dedicated I am. The sun is coming up. It is 5:37 a.m. I have a very long drive in approximately 4 hours. I also have clients today, so I'm basically just gonna stop on the side of the road and do my therapy sessions in my car. This was life-changing, eye-opening. I'm speechless. I know last night at Myrtle's Bed and Breakfast was a powerful one, but this one felt a little different because it felt a lot closer to home. These are men that died. Oh my God. Another cop with their lights on just passed by me. Anyway, it's like I was trying to film the outro video and it's like, they're all just coming. Like, what are y'all after? Leave these people be. Anyway, this investigation felt different because the spirits that I was actually investigating at Myrtle's, those spirits have been dead for hundreds of years. These men who've been buried here have been dead for minutes. Like, I was in the same lifetime as them. Their families are still alive walking this earth. Most of them, if not all of them, were not able to say bye to the men who were buried at the cemetery. But thank y'all for watching. If y'all like the content that I put out, please be sure to like, comment, share, and most importantly, if we vibe, subscribe. Okay, I am out of here. I never thought I'd be saying this, but get me back to Texas!